Today on First Cup, the touchpad doesn't work on this laptop, but fortunately it's touchscreen. I got coffee. We've got a new episode of Martial Arts Radio, so stick around. We're doing this thing in 20. Oh, it is warm in here. Why is it so warm in here? I have to cut my hair again, almost. Oh, can I go back to bed? No, I can't. All right. Here we go in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today is Thursday. Hey, I got it right. It's February 3rd, 2022. My name is Jeremy, and this is my first cup of coffee. Man, that's good. I'm still working on that Costa Rican coffee. It's amazing. Good morning, Jenny. Good morning, Ray. Good morning to all of you, whether you're watching live or later or listening. Thanks for coming by for First Cup. Yesterday was a tiring day. Did everything I had to do. I even did a bunch of things I didn't have to do. Like order a new computer. Because remember when I said, oh yeah, I swapped the video card. Everything was fine. Everything was not fine. Not even a little. That thing is suffering. My desktop is suffering. It rebooted at least 3 times unplanned during the day. So I started poking around. I was like, hey, new computer time. We'll start at Costco because I have a Costco membership. And I'm looking around. And one, there's very little. And 2, what's there is really expensive. I was like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. So I went on Amazon, checked out some things there. I'd recently snagged a really good used machine, refurbished machine for one of the team members. $180 shipped. And they had a new computer. Like, great deal. Nope. Everything that was available was roughly the same spec as what I bought 5 years ago. But I did find a laptop at Costco that they just pulled $300 off it, $899 to $599. So I grabbed one of those. It's not what I wanted to do, but it's what I did. And now this thing, for some reason, I set it down last night and I picked it back up and the touchpad wasn't working. And I know there's a button and I pressed the button and it's not. So I'm going to have to deal with that. I'll deal with that after this. I got piles of computers. None of them work. Good morning also. See, I keep going back to the touchpad. Good morning also to Kelly and Dennis and Sarah. Sarah says, and your dragon hoodies come today. Well, that's super cool. But they're not mine. They're yours. I think that's great. What else happened yesterday? What besides complaining about computers? I didn't leave the house. I needed a day. I was all the travel over the weekend, Maine and everything. I was just really overwhelmed. And I had some things that I wanted to do in the evening. And I just took a step back and I was honest with myself. I said, look, yep. There are a bunch of reasons you can do this. But what about the most important reason? Taking care of yourself. So I hung out. I relaxed. I didn't get anywhere close to the number of steps I wanted. And I survived. And I went to bed at a reasonable hour. And it was good. And I feel better. So now, today, by the way, we must have gotten snow. I can hear it in the road. Feel better today. I'll go to the gym today. Speaking of today, we've got an episode of Martial Arts Radio. You know what it's about? I'll give you a hint. Good morning, Brian. Good thing there wasn't anything left in that drink. Andrew and I did an episode about 12 Months to Health. We talked about the origin of the book, the psychology that it leans into, the research, how we conducted it, etc. So I think there are 2 big groups of people that are going to appreciate the book. 1, people who have the book and are working through it. 2, people who find behind the scenes explanations of endeavors interesting. because it relates to a lot of other stuff. And then there's probably other people who are going to listen to it anyway or watch it because there's a video version. And that's cool. We're trying to mix it up. We're trying to spread it around. Sales for the book have come down a bit, which is disappointing, but it's okay. This was a monumental effort. And I know for the people who have purchased it and are working the program the way it was laid out, they're finding some success. Not massive success, because that's not what it's designed to be. It's designed to be sustainable and reasonable. I could get you to meet all of your physical and health goals if we changed everything at once. And 30 days later, you would be exhausted and you would fall back to your old patterns. We talk about that stuff too. Coffee is particularly good this morning. It's going to be a great day. Did I do anything else? I started picking up the house because there was stuff everywhere. Made some phone calls. Talked to some clients. It was all good. It was a good day. Dennis is on day 69 of the program. Nice. That's month 3. Dennis, if you could sum up your experience in 3 words, what would it be? Here's a fun one. I actually had someone that I engaged with professionally reply to an email and say, hey, what's this book? Because they worked at a place where Amazon was filtered, and I sent back some information, and she said, can you send that to my personal email address? So I did. That was kind of fun, being asked about it. Ooh, Dennis, I like this, says simple, sustainable change. That's it. How do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. How do you get healthier after not healthy or less healthier than you would like to be for your whole life? 1 bite at a time, 1 day at a time. If this takes off, we will make a day of the year calendar out of it. But we're not there yet. Haha. And Jenny's on the ball. Jenny says, Dennis, for those of you who don't know, Jenny runs the book division. Dennis, may I steal this as a possible quote from you? He's going to say yes. Of course he's going to say yes. I know Dennis. Is there anything else today? Are any of you travel agents? I want to take off, and it's exhausting. All right, here's the deal. I was talking to a friend about this last night. I don't mind being single. Been single for years, has not fazed me. There are a handful of times when I'd rather not be single. One of them is when I'm sick and I have to take care of myself, and I don't want to. And another is in planning a vacation. Now, this is not meant as a sexist statement. It is an observation based, I guess, on the type of women that I date, if nothing more. Women seem to like to plan vacations. I like to go on them. I don't want to plan them. I just want to show up. I just want to know, okay, here's our itinerary. Let me handle the logistics on that. Okay, we've got to be at the airport at this time. We've got to be in the car and leaving this time. Like that. Throw the blanket, the wet blanket of what we're all facing right now on top of that with testing, and it gets even more annoying. And so I'm looking at all these places I can go, and I'm like, all right, I could go there or there, there. I'll just stay home. That's where I'm at right now because it's so complicated and it's so annoying. But if any of you are travel agents, I'll hire you. Coffee is awesome. So, anything else going on today? I don't think so. There's another plow going by. It must be really snowy. It was warm yesterday. That was nice. It's supposed to be warmer today. Dennis says, you have 100% described the vacation planning dynamic in the Campo home. Sarah plans the vacation and you show up. It's not meant to be sexist, just observational. Doesn't have to be that way. I guess we'll switch into it. We'll get into the stuff. So Frank and I are working on something here. We're trying something new, and we'll see how it goes. So here we go. I'm glad this computer has a touchscreen. You should be able to see this. These are Frank's contributions. We're trying to move these from comments into graphics. Not that anybody else has to do this. It's just something Frank and I are playing with. So tell us about the audiobooks you have recently listened to. So right now I am listening to 2 audiobooks. The first one being Dan Millman's memoir. What is it? Peaceful Heart, Warrior Spirit. It's really good. It's also really dense. And I don't mean dense in terms of words or the language he's using, but the emotional content is very dense. And I'm not plowing through it. I'm listening to it bits at a time because there's so much substance there that I reach a point where I fill up and I'm like, okay, I need to digest this. But it's good. And he reads it, and I really appreciate it. Kelly says she's got an agent for me. I would love that. Thank you. That would be awesome. The other I'm listening to, I listen to a lot of post-apocalyptic fiction because there's this particular reader, a guy named Kevin Pierce, who just has this great voice. He doesn't sound like Sam Elliott, but there's a quality to him that is similar. It's just this very commanding voice. And I like listening to it. And he generally works. Most of the books he reads are good. I don't know how much he draws a line and says, no, this book sucks, I'm not reading it, because there have been a couple of them like, eh. But for the most part, I really enjoy it. What I'm listening to right now is a 10-book series. This is my 3rd time through it. I think I did it the first time like 6-7 years ago, called 299 Days. And it's about a partial collapse of society and what happens. There's a lot of character development. Most of what I enjoy for books, for movies, for audiobooks has strong character development. I really appreciate learning more about people, whether they're real or fictional. And this book series does a lot of that. What did I watch? Oh, I watched a Netflix film. I don't know if it was specifically. Anyway, I watched it on Netflix called Security. And it reminds me of like a John Wick light. Antonio Banderas stars in it. Not a lot of great fight choreography, but if you find the broader definition of defense interesting, you might actually like this film. What was the one that I watched with Owen Wilson where he actually made some intelligent decisions? Most of the decisions in this movie were actually really smart. Some really risky stuff, but reasonably well thought out. The people who wrote this were sensible. Jenny says, strange to think that we have come to a point where you can choose a book based on who will read it to you. Yeah, I think it's really neat. I was skeptical about audiobooks early on. I really was. And then a friend of mine gave me a copy of Jim Collins' Good to Great, which I've talked about on the show a number of times. And I realized how much more I got out of it. And that was even before podcasts were really a thing. And then podcasts came around and I said, wow, I can consume a lot of information while I'm driving. Cool. And then after the 400th Audible ad I heard, I got an Audible account. And it's funny that, what did I start with? I tried starting with, I think it was Dune, and the reader was horrible, like really bad. And if you know that book, it starts kind of slow. And then I tried something else and went, oh, this is the experience I'm supposed to have. And I have something like 80 books in here. It's pretty good stuff. And as the platforms developed, there are people who will, they'll write all their books, they'll sell them individually. And then when they get to the end to grab a new audience, they sell all of them together as one book. And you can pay $15-20 for 40 hours of book, 60 hours of book. That's a pretty good deal. And I find listening to books where people are doing things, where there's a little bit of an adrenaline response. I get a lot of work done around the house. I don't do it while I'm listening to work. Good morning, Andy. You do. I hope you have a good day as well. All right, so back to that graphic. Frank had 2 questions, and then I know Josh has one in the chat or in Facebook. Who are your favorite musicians? Well, that one's pretty easy. My relationship with music has changed so much. I used to listen to music exclusively in the car. I mean, not exclusively, but primarily in the car. And now it's mostly podcasts and audiobooks. Music for me is usually around the house when I'm working, not like intellectual work or academic work, but like physically working around the house or at the gym. Music is motivating for me in that way. Most of what I listen to are maybe they're still current, somebody like Jay-Z, but hip hop from the 90s. But that's not all I listen to. I love Tupac and Jay-Z and Nas and Eminem, but I also love John Denver and the Beatles and Creedence Clearwater Revival. I love music. I really do. I've been to concerts ranging from Limp Bizkit to Dave Matthews Band to Ice Cube. And so I've given this definition on various episodes of the show. What is art? Art is a creative endeavor in which the artist leaves a piece of himself. That's my definition of art. I don't know if anybody else shares that definition, but that came from observations specifically around music and musicians that we look to and say, wow, this artist really changed things, but they burnt out. And it's Kurt Cobain, it's Bradley Nolan, it's Amy Winehouse, it's Jimi Hendrix. Artists who invested all of who they were into their music, and it cost them their lives. I don't think that's an accident. And actually, if you know anything about the Sublime story with Bradley Nolan, he knew it was going to happen. He went into signing the record deal that got them that major album, knowing it was going to cost him his life. But he was that passionate about his music. I respond to passionate music. It could be classical. It could be country. If it's passionate, if it resonates, if I feel something, I'm in. Coffee is so good this morning. I haven't had cream in my coffee the last couple of days, just kind of testing something with how my body responds. I have a mild dairy, not allergy, intolerance, and I suspect it's been building up. And so I was trying to give it a break and see what happens. And so we have some contrast. We will see what happens. And now for a longer, I keep trying to use the touchpad. It's not working. All right. Oh, I can do this. This is kind of interesting. I'm enlarging the screen. All right. And any of you who want to chime in on music, I would love to hear what you listen to musically. Boom, 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 boom. All right. Josh says, here's something I've been wondering for a while, but never thought to ask. I get the sense talking about it is sort of a taboo subject because it's about money, at least superficially. How much do you think a belt test should cost? Should a black belt test cost more? What about each subsequent degree? Should it keep going up? At what point can a school no longer justify that the testing fee is to cover the cost of keeping the lights on, the belt, the time, the certificate, etc.? Now, I know we have at least 2 school owners in the chat. And I want to preface what I'm going to say with this is not a judgment of what other people do. Most of you know, last Friday, I participated in a test for which I paid money, for which I had no issues paying money. On the flip side, when I grew up in the martial arts, there were no testing fees. I think that changed eventually, but early on it wasn't like that. When I ran my school in the early 2000s, I did not charge fees for belt rank. I am in conversation to open a school in the future. I am unlikely to charge for rank. So let me explain why first, and then let's talk about where there's a counter argument. Whether you're charging, a school has to make a certain amount of money, right? There are kind of 2 thresholds there. We've got break even and we've got profit. Okay. The first step that any school has to get to is breaking even, right? You open a school, you have 0 students, you have to be able to cover the bills. And whether or not you consider your own living expenses part of the bills, if you're a full-time school, that's up to you. Whether you charge $20 a month and you charge extra money for testing, or you take the money that would go into testing and the belts and roll that into the monthly fee, it doesn't really matter. It's the same either way, right? Like you've got the same amount of money coming in. But where it's different for me is twofold. One, it's the optics of the situation. I do not like the messaging that goes along with, hey, you've done a really good job. I would like to invite you to test for your next rank. Now pay me. I don't like that messaging. I like doing it as, hey, you're ready to test. All of your fees are covered because I've charged you slightly more every month that you've been here. I prefer that way of doing it. Again, this is my opinion. This is not a judgment of anybody else. But why might you want to do it the other way? What if in your martial arts school, your tests are really long? What if they are, even at lower ranks, hours long? What if you bring other people in? What if you're an organization where you are required to, or you really want to bring in some expert level martial artists to help evaluate, whether because that's part of the culture of the school you've created, or it is a requirement? Somebody's got to pay for that. And it is a lot easier to tie the expenses of an event to the income of the event. Makes sense to me. Should the price go up with each rank? Does the length of the test or the requirements behind the scenes go up with that? Quite often it does. If we take a look at last week's test that I engaged in, for example, I was charged a certain amount of money. Okay. Grandmaster Wallace had to get to the event. Now, we did, I'm sure he would have been there anyway. But if I do the math on the income to the organization for those in the room, wasn't that much money. There were 8 of us. And Dennis and I are in an organization there where the price goes up as the rank goes up. I know what everybody paid, assuming they paid what was suggested, proposed, required. There we go. It wasn't a huge amount of money. It covered his flight, meals. But if you factor in time, made like $10 an hour. It's not a lot of money, right? And I think that's an important thing to consider. Now, we've got some stuff coming through here, and I'm going to read this. Okay. Michael says, at my school, we do not charge for testing. It's included in the monthly bill. I don't believe politics and belt rank should mix. And there is a temptation when, and I've seen this happen in schools, where when someone has to pay for a testing, here's the hypothetical situation that I've used to justify, again, my perspective, not attacking anybody else. My hot water heater just died. I've got these 2 over here who are on the verge of testing. If I say yes, I get an influx of X dollars. We're all human. That's a really difficult situation to resist. I'll read the music in a moment. Dennis says, when I ran my school for 21 years, I never charged for rank exams. I likened it to college tuition. There is no additional fee for taking final exams. And then he quotes, rank should be an honor, not an expense. So Dennis and I are similar there. Jenny says, our association, and I think this may be a key, that word, charges separately for testing. Pretty sure each school sets their own prices for in-house testing. Don, black belt, testing might be a standard across the association, and at least part of that covers the cost of bringing our grandmaster to town from California. See, I hadn't read any of these, but I'm speculating based on what I know of the industry. Kelly says, Kelly's the other school owner that I knew was in the chat. I do charge for testing because not every student tests every time. My monthly tuition is under $10 a class and is a month-to-month commitment. Color belt testings are $10 to cover the belts and an additional rent. And this is where I was speculating that it may make sense. My color belt testings are 8 to 10 hours long. Black belt testings are 6 to 7, and I charge $100 regardless of degree, but students receive a pair of black pants and embroidered belt. However, through my training, black belt testings went up $100 per degree. And she adds on, however, I have never kept a student from testing due to finances. I've had students get black belt never having paid. Dennis adds on, I had no issue with the Superfoot testing fee. It's a totally different dynamic as we're certainly not paying Bill monthly tuition, and he gives of himself quite freely to everyone who trains with him. And I was pretty sure that's how you ran your school, Dennis. Kelly, I was pretty sure that's how you ran your school because I know you both somewhat. I don't think there's anything wrong with either approach. I think where it becomes problematic is when the value isn't there. Let's say I pay X number of dollars per month, and then I'm asked to pay X number of dollars, more money for my testing. If I don't see the value in that as a student, that's where it becomes a problem. If I do see the value, it's not a problem. I am a free market capitalist. Plenty of people give me a hard time about that. If anybody wants to argue capitalism and its sins, we could argue offline, or at least off the context of this show. This is the heart of where I object to the term McDojo. If the people in the school find value in it, you don't have to. If I run a school and I teach 1,000 and it costs $1,000 a month and I charge $10,000 for a black belt, that's my choice. My students have the choice of visiting and engaging with that school or not. I could, day one, somebody could walk in and I could say, all right, if you want to train, I need you to write me a check for $100,000 right now. That covers your expenses for life. Somebody might say, oh, okay, here you go. And what if I had 20 students? Cool. That's a lot of money. It's $2 million. I would, by most people, be labeled a McDojo. But so what? What if those 20 people feel like they get the best training and they love going to class and they feel like they learn things? And what if I, as an instructor, give them tremendous time? Heck, at $2 million, I'm probably working with them 5 days a week. We're probably running classes full time. Okay. If the value is there, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people say. All right. Ray says, I have no problem paying for testing. I see it like getting a license. I have a bunch of different licenses and have had to pay for each of those or additional endorsement. That's a great way to look at it. And honestly, this is a piece that I hadn't thought of. Josh, I'm really glad you posted this. This is good. Dennis says, and just to be clear, and as Bill Wallace would say, my way, not charging for rank exams, is just that, my way. It worked great for how I set up my martial arts business, but it is in no way the only way or the right way for everyone. I think the only thing that is more discussed on this subject is whether or not to have people sign commitments. I know schools that do a phenomenal job with requiring people to commit beyond month to month. I know plenty of other schools who do a wonderful job not doing that. I know schools that do a terrible job with both of those scenarios. It is not whether or not they pay for rank that makes it a good decision. It is not whether or not they have to sign up for a year at a time or whatever that makes it a good decision. It comes back to the value. What do the instructors deliver to the students? What do the students want? Does it match up? If it matches up, value has been exchanged and everybody's happy. Right? Anybody got anything else on that? Dennis agrees. Ray, that's a great comment. Yeah, the idea of looking at rank as a license or endorsement, especially if in your school you hold, if the curriculum requires certain advancement in order to learn new things. I think that very well correlates with a license analogy. There's no wrong way to do it. The right way to do it is the one that works for you. I will admit there have been schools where I have looked at testing fees and been frustrated because I didn't feel like I was getting the value. I've been to other schools where I was surprised I wasn't paying more. And in some of those cases, I was paying nothing and expected to pay. I have a saying in business. I don't think I can call it a saying. I don't say it that often. I feel all employees should know what it's like to be a boss. All employers should know what it's like to be an employee. Because you forget. There were times in my early career, because I started my IT company so early, that 7-8 years in, I'd forgot. I'd spent more time as an employer than an employee, like much more time. And I forgot what it was like. And I knew that, but it was hard to empathize. And then when I sold off the company, I ended up with some clients where I'm essentially the employee. And it's nice to remember that. We could extend the same thing to martial arts. It's nice to know or remember what it's like as a student coming up, which is part of why I think every instructor needs an instructor. But students don't know what it's like to be an instructor. The responsibility, holding the space physically and emotionally for everyone to train in advance. There's a great deal of responsibility there. And I think a lot of students may underestimate the time commitment that goes into being an instructor. Most martial arts instructors, if you message them, will write you back. How many students do they have? How many of them are messaging them, calling them, wanting their time and attention? I have a lot of people that want my time and attention. It takes a lot of time to reply to all the emails and answer the Facebook messages and the phone calls and texts. But I do it because I see what we're doing here as a martial arts school. It is helping people grow, just not with the punching and kicking part, but the thinking about the punching and kicking part. Good stuff, good conversation, and I appreciate you all for coming by. Remember, if you want to support us, you got a few things that you can do. You can join the Patreon, patreon.com/whistlekick. I put up a new update yesterday. You can also use code FIRSTCUP15 at whistlekick.com. There's a new shirt in the Essentials collection. We swapped out the basic t-shirt for a design that is simpler and I like better. You can also check out everything on the family page, whistlekick.com/family. Andrew sent me something that'll go in next week. Just thinking of that in my head. We do the show every weekday, 6:30 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Facebook, on YouTube, and then Twitter, Twitch. You can download it as a podcast in audio form. And if you've got questions or comments, leave them on the Facebook page, facebook.com/firstcupwithjeremy. If you don't do Facebook, you can email me, jeremy@whistlekick.com. You can email me anyway. I want to thank all of you for coming by. I appreciate your time. This was a wonderful conversation. And I suspect those of you who stuck around for it got a lot out of it. This is my favorite part about First Cup, when we collaborate, because we can't quite do this on martial arts radio. I hope you will check out the episode on the book, and I hope it gives you further context as to why we made it and why it's valuable and why you can apply the principles that we use to create the book, as well as the book itself, to anything, including your martial arts. And we do talk about that as well. Thanks for coming by. You guys are the best. Take care. Peace.